Hello. Hi everyone, my name is Katarina. I'm a final year PhD student at the Netherlands Cancer Institute. And today I'm going to talk about our secondary analysis with the cholangiocarcinoma cohort originating from this EORTC Quality of Life group project. Don't have anything to disclose. I would like to start my presentation talking a little bit broader than just cholangiocarcinoma and focusing on rare cancer. So as we know, cholangiocarcinoma is a rare cancer, but those are defined of less than 600,000 people per year. And although called rare, you actually have more than 200 heterogeneity subtypes. And in Europe, you have approximately 650,000 new cases per year. And currently, you have around 5 million people living with a type of rare cancer. These patients are known to have a late diagnosis, misdiagnosis, less opportunities for treatments and clinical trials, leading to impaired health-related quality of life and a higher burden for their life socially, mentally, and physically. The EORTC Quality of Life Rare Cancer Study is a study by the European Organization for Research and Treatment of Cancer, EORTC, where we try to take into account the diversity of rare cancer subtypes, treatments, and patients' experiences, the fact that currently you do not have one single questionnaire to assess quality of life in these patients, and when you try to assess quality of life, you actually have an enormous heterogeneity in the choice of the questionnaires used. So the project was created aiming to create a measurement strategy to assess health-related quality of life that could be used for researchers, but also in clinical practice for solid rare tumors. We aim to do that with an international collaboration, so we were lucky to rely on 20 countries in and outside of Europe, in which we recruited patients from 20 different subtypes of solid rare cancers, including, of course, cholangiocarcinoma. But what exactly do I mean when I talk about health-related quality of life? The concept is that it's the patient's perception of how their illness and treatment impacts their lives mentally, physically, and socially. So normally we ask patients if they feel more tired than usual, if they have felt more anxious or irritated since their diagnosis, and if they're still able to work or if their relationships have changed. And normally, health-related quality of life is measured by means of questionnaires. And those can be either generic questionnaires with extremely broad questions, such as, have you felt tired? Do you have taken a long walk? And sometimes, if available, a tumor-specific questionnaire is also presented. And these are some of the options and some of the tumor types that did indeed develop a specific questionnaire, such as anal cancer, head and neck cancer, and lung cancer. Part of the project, we also did literature research in which we tried to understand how health-related quality of life is assessed in rare cancers in general. And what we confirm is that indeed there is a heterogeneity when looking at quality of life in these groups. While some use only a generic questionnaire, others use only a tumor-specific, but luckily the majority of them indeed make a combination of generic and tumor-specific, such as cholangiocarcinoma. We found 18 studies investigating quality of life in patients with either biliary tract or specifically cholangiocarcinoma, but we did see different strategies to assess that. And within the tumor-specific questionnaires, we saw that actually a questionnaire not from the EORTC was chosen as the most common tool. So what we found is that within the generic questionnaires, 3 were mainly used alongside with a biliary tract cancer-specific questionnaire developed with the EORTC and the FACT help. And this tumor-specific questionnaire has questions such as, have you worried about losing weight? Have you felt stressed? Have your skin or eyes been yellow? So although a bit specific, still generic. So our study decided to then try to explore and provide a comprehensive understanding of health-related quality of life in these patients with the cholangiocarcinoma diagnosis, by presenting, again, the generic questionnaire and the tumor-specific, but asking how relevant those questions were for the patients. And then after that, patients went into an interview where we asked questions related to their work, related to family relationships, friends, partners, financial hurdles, a very holistic approach in which we aim to indeed have a comprehensive evaluation with the qualitative informing the quantitative assessment. I will come back to this later, but we are currently writing the manuscript, so this is a little bit of a sneak peek. We managed to recruit 27 adult patients with cholangiocarcinoma, mean age of 63 years, slightly majority more women, mainly from the UK, followed by Turkey, Brazil, Italy, so quite an international cohort. We had a slightly prevalence for metastatic patients with a palliative treatment goal, and most patients had received chemotherapy, followed by surgery and immunotherapy, but the majority of them had received more than one treatment. And the time since diagnosis was 2 years and 8 months. When the questionnaire was presented to the patients, as I said, they were asked to rate the questions on relevance. So how, considering their trajectory, how relevant is to be asked if you have had pain or if you're tired. And we saw that from the generic questionnaire, trouble taking a long walk, pain, trouble sleeping, and overall health and quality of life were the most important and relevant items. And from the tumor-specific questionnaire was, again, pain throughout the night and locally in the stomach area, if they felt stressed and worried about their own health and their family in the future. But, of course, we also wanted to know out of all of those entire questionnaires exactly what matters most to the patients, and that was worried about their health in the future, pain, and worried about their family in the future. So we then moved on to the interviews, and we saw that actually the aspect of this patient's life that was mainly reported by them was linked to the social domain and the psychological domain, rather than physical symptomatology. And what we saw that patients reported was that in regards to their physical symptoms, fatigue, itchiness, nausea and constipation were some of the items reported, but of course limitations in mobility, in doing their sports, doing their hobbies, and being dependent on others. In their social domain, we saw that some patients couldn't work long hours anymore. Some of them had to stop working completely and had a lot of financial hurdles. But of course, we also had more positive experiences with some patients reporting support from work. Regarding their partners, there was a mix of sexual reluctance, feeling like a burden to their partners, but also a lot of support. Likewise with friendships. Some of patients reported clarity on their friendships. They found out who their real friends were, but also they were able to distance them from others. A lot of patients reported feeling like a burden to others, experiencing a lack of understanding. People thought they looked sick or they were feeling sick, and they were embarrassed many times to have to be explaining themselves over and over. And in regards to the psychological domain, patients coped in different ways. Some of them were very irritated, but the majority actually understood and accepted the situation after a while, and tried to have a realistic view of what was going on with them. But of course, patients also reported shock, worry, fear of disease progression, and also feeling sorry for themselves or upset for not cutting up earlier. So basically, from the physical domain, pain, fatigue, and tiredness were the main important items. From the psychological domain, worry, psychological distress, but also acceptance of the situation as well. And from the social domain, the most reported by patients, they had limitations in their housework, in their social activities, but also luckily some did not report any changes. Alongside of these themes, one thing that we also found out was the long diagnostic trajectory reported by 9 different patients, either from first appointment to GP to indeed months and months trying to find their diagnosis. So what we have seen so far is that from the generic questionnaire, actually what mattered most to patients were questions related to pain, all the other ones not so much. And from the tumor-specific questionnaire was about worry about health in their future, about their family, and about being less active. And the qualitative issues actually pointed out that for patients, the social impacts matter more than the physical symptoms that they experienced. And we found out a new additional item reported by many patients linked to the long diagnostic trajectory. So when we try to think we have all of these findings. How do we actually put this into practice, and what does this mean for clinical trials and for future studies? Well, the idea is to have a very personalized assessment. So we see that from the generic questionnaire, these were some of the most relevant questions. So we would cherry pick them from the generic questionnaire. Together with that, we would look into the tumor-specific questionnaire and cherry pick from there the ones that were most relevant to the patients. Alongside with that, we would also look at some other questions that already exist but are not in the questionnaires generally presented to these patients, such as if they have been dependent or if they feel that they have been a burden to others. And again, we would add them to a specific list. And if indeed needed, there is always the possibility of creating an additional question for that particular set of patients, in this case, linked to the long diagnostic trajectory, or, for example, accepting the situation. Because in the end of the day, we want to make sure that we have a full assessment considering a more generic view, a more tumor-specific one, and then indeed additional items reported by the patients, alongside with potentially the creation of new items for specific needs for example, cholangiocarcinoma. We want to make sure that for the trials and clinical studies, we can really address the particular aims of that study for that population and issues that they face. As I said, we are writing the manuscript, and actually this is an open question to the audience. The main part of why we do this is for the patients, is for you. So we are actually looking for volunteers to review the manuscript with their own set of eyes from the patient's perspective, from the caregiver's perspective, to make sure that our research is translated and comprehensible to you. So this is an open invitation. Please find me at the end of the day, or please send me an email if you think, oh, I would like to help, or I've never done this, I would be curious to see how it works. We are looking forward to just getting some more help and hands-on. But of course, I'm not doing this alone. We have several collaborators all over the world. Also, Ellen, as well, since the beginning, has been actually my first collaborator that I spoke. So it's definitely, this is the key of how this can work. And yeah, I would like to thank my team, of course, and all the professionals that helped recruiting the patients, and the patients, of course.